We have just finished the fascinating presidency of Nixon, and in these last two presentations we're going to cover the remaining presidents. This presentation covers Chapter 27, Section 2 and 3, Chapter 28, Sections 1 through 4, and Chapter 29, Sections 1 and 2. We are in our final goal now, Goal 12, and we're going to be dealing with 5 objectives. Objective 1, summarize significant events in foreign policy since the Vietnam War. Objective 2, evaluate the impact of recent constitutional amendments, court rulings, and federal legislation on U.S. citizens. Objective 3, identify and assess the impact of economic, technological, and environmental changes in the U.S. Objective 4, identify and assess the impact of social, political, and cultural changes in the U.S. And lastly, Objective 5, assess the impact of growing racial and ethnic diversity in American society. The essential questions we'll answer in this presentation are: what spurred the rise of conservatism in the late 1970s and early 1980s? What were Reagan's foreign policies and how did they contribute to the fall of communism in Europe? What actions did George H.W. Bush take abroad? And what were the successes and failures of the Clinton presidency? We'll start with Gerald Ford, who was president from 1974 to 1977. Ford is the first and only unelected president. And if you remember, that was because he was appointed to the vice presidency after Spiro Agnew resigned. Then, once Nixon resigned, he became president. Ford is a Republican, he's a conservative, and after he is put into the position of president, he immediately pardons Nixon. So Nixon did not serve any jail time for the crimes he committed. Ford also signed the Helsinki Accords with Canada and most of the European nations, and this stated that all nations would maintain current European borders. So this is essentially a victory for the USSR, but it tried to make sure that communism would not spread throughout Europe. Ford also urged Congress to cut billions of dollars from the national budget and increase taxes on corporations. He called this his initiative WIN, W-I-N, Whip Inflation Now. This was not such a successful enterprise, but his Bilingual Education Act of 1974 is. This provided for immigrant students to be taught in native languages while they're learning English. So, as some of you can imagine, coming to this country, or some of you have experience, coming to this country without speaking English is a difficult task. The Bilingual Education Act made it so that students speaking another language could buy some time and allow them to learn English before being expected to perform at the levels of English-speaking students. So Ford, however, loses his re-election campaign in 1976, so he is never elected to the presidency. In the next video, we'll talk about Presidents Carter and Reagan.